My name is Chloe Wilson. I am a senior in the Integrated Marketing Communications and Magazine program here at Ole Miss. And it is my pleasure to introduce Clinton Smith. He is the editor-in-chief of Veranda magazine.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. Again, I'm Clint Smith, editor of Veranda magazine, and if you're not familiar with it, it's one of the top decorating, architecture, and design magazines in the United States. It's published by Hearst. Our sister publications include Elle Decor and House Beautiful, among others. So it's nice to be here. It's always nice to be we work on the 27th floor of the Hearst Tower, so if you're ever in New York, please come by and visit, but it's always nice to be back here at Ole Miss. I graduated in 1999. After Jonathan's presentation, I'm feeling a little bit better about myself that I only have 8,000 unanswered emails instead of 12,000. So a few to catch up on. So after hearing Amy's wonderful introduction last night, Amy Lyles Wilson, I started reflecting a little bit, and I didn't want this to turn into This Is Your Life, but it really spawned a memory of how I first met Samir. Whenever I graduated from high school, my parents said, if you'll go to a community college for 2 years, you can go anywhere you want after that. Well, growing up in rural East Texas, Mississippi was as far as my mind could take me. And so it was either after I graduated, actually right before I graduated, it was about 2 weeks before graduation. I could not decide. I'd been accepted at Ole Miss and the University of Texas at Austin. And for some reason, I started looking online. We just had the internet. We did not have email at that point. And I called Dr. Husney, or his assistant, and said, I want to hear about this magazine program. So I got in my car and drove 7 hours from Texas to come see Dr. Husney, and I essentially interviewed him. And I said, okay, well, I need to think about what I'm going to do. And he said, no, you're going to come here. And I was like, oh, okay. So much like Amy, how they dragged her into the building, I also was pulled into the program, and it was the best thing ever. The other funny thing about that is I said, okay, I guess I'm coming to Ole Miss. And I said, I'll see you in the fall. He said, no, I'm not teaching in the fall. He said, you have to come in 2 weeks. I'm only teaching in the summer. So I had to pack up my car immediately, and I got back to Texas, told my parents I'm moving to Ole Miss, and I'm going to take this class, and I start in 2 weeks. I don't think they really understood what I was getting myself into, and neither did I. But again, it was the best thing ever. My career, and whenever I came here, I have to say, I was actually burned out of journalism before I even got started. I was editor of the high school yearbook, I was editor of the community college newspaper, and I was bound and determined not to take any more journalism courses. And of course, I got lured in and could not get out of it. And so after I graduated, I moved to Atlanta, worked for a custom publishing company for a year, and then I said, I'm really done with publishing. So I moved to California for 2 years, and for a short time worked at Apple Computer at their headquarters. And it was miserable. I hated it. At this point, Apple only had the iPod. They did not have any retail stores. They had no other they certainly didn't have an iPhone. And I remember the stock being $28 a share, which, as you know now, I think it's close to $600. And when I was 23 years old and left, I sold all my shares because I was thinking, God, I'm rich. I have $250. And so after I moved to California, I got a call, and the previous editor I had worked with in Atlanta had just accepted the position at Better Homes and Gardens as their number 2 editor, and she said, would you come back and interview for my job here in Atlanta? And of course I did, and was editor-in-chief of Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles for 5 years. Then I went to Southern Accents magazine for 2 years as senior editor. Then I went back to Atlanta Homes again for another 6 years. I worked there 3 times. I told them the third time was the charm. And then about 15 months ago, Veranda magazine in New York called, which I had been meeting with them, and so it just seemed like a natural fit. And so for the past little over a year, I have been in New York. So what did I learn at Ole Miss that continues to serve me today? I think the main thing that I walked away with was a lot of common sense. There was a lot of great theory and a lot of history that we learned, but a lot of common sense, which, in the day-to-day art of magazine making, sometimes the common sense gets lost. And that's one thing that if you really start to think about it and just look at each page and ask the very basic questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how, the reader appreciates it more than you can ever imagine. And again, having worked at many magazines over the years, somehow in many cases, the most basic principles get lost. And the other thing I feel that I really walked away with, even though I edit this beautiful, gracious, genteel, decorating and architecture magazine, the skill set that I learned here, I feel that could translate to any publication if you have a passion for it. If Sports Illustrated called tomorrow and said, we will offer you the position of editor-in-chief, I think I could do it. Do I have a passion for it? Probably not. But I think those same skills that I have at this magazine would translate there. And so I think students really need to keep their eyes open and don't get so many people start in one career path and follow that trajectory, but don't feel afraid to take chances and go in a different direction, because you never know where it will lead you. Whenever I came to Ole Miss, I had never been on an airplane before. And one of the things I credit with this program and having graduated is it's really opened me up to the world. Because of my job, I've been able to travel to New Zealand, China, Thailand, France, England, Iceland, Turkey, the entire world. And again, not to turn this into This Is Your Life, but I really do owe it all to Samir and this program, because it really, really just changed my life. Again, one of the things I think is very important for students is make yourself indispensable. Take on any task, any challenge that you're given. So many people walk into a magazine publishing job and they immediately want to be the editor-in-chief. I never set out to be the editor-in-chief of Veranda. I always went in to do my job and do the very best that I could do. And at the end of the day, people notice and people call you. I have never gone out and looked for a job. Anytime that I have taken a job, it's because they have noticed the work I have done and they have reached out to me. So when you're doing the menial task and you think it's the most boring job ever, always remember that people are watching and people are noticing what you're doing. People often talk about luck, and I really hate that expression, and I don't really believe in it. I think it's Oprah Winfrey who says, luck is when opportunity presents itself and you were prepared to take it. Luck just doesn't happen. It doesn't fall from the sky. If you weren't prepared to take it, it would not happen. So always be on the lookout for those things that really do come out of nowhere, but constantly do that type of work. Again, if it's the most menial task, you don't know. You really have no idea what that could lead to. Always be prepared for change. Since I graduated in 1999, as Samir says, the prophets of doom and gloom had already started their drumbeat that the industry was going to fall apart even before I graduated. And so 15 years later, we're still standing. I work for a very innovative company, Hearst, of course, which has just launched 2 new titles, Dr. Oz, and another title called Trending New York. And so the industry is not going away, but you do have to be prepared for the change of it. If you were to ask me to compare my job description from now to 2 years ago, to 4 years ago, to 6 years ago, it's completely different, and it continues to change every 2 years. And you have to be nimble, and you have to stay on top of everything. And the people who I think are constantly complaining about the industry that's falling apart are the people who can adapt to the change. They're scared by it, and they curl up in a little ball, and they really cannot adapt and change. So you have to be prepared to handle all of the things coming at you very nimbly and quickly. Even for a large company like Hearst and a large magazine like Veranda, we move much quicker than we did 5 years ago. Finally, while magazine making is very serious business, a magazine like Veranda is a multi-million-dollar business. You can't take it too seriously. I always say there are no decorating emergencies. And so when my phone rings at midnight or 11:30, I'm like, this is really not an emergency. So whatever you do in life, do it to your very, very best. We are so passionate about what we do. And again, we take it very seriously, but have some fun with it. And don't get bogged down with the bureaucracy and everything else. Follow your passion, follow your dream, and at the end, you will definitely, definitely succeed. Thank you.
Questions for Clinton?
A compliment. Great message. That was really great.
Thank you.
Questions besides the compliment?
Goes behind what?
Branding yourself.
You can't worry about that. I think at the end of the day, you have to do the work. I always kept my head down. Did the best job that I could do, whatever it was. And you know, sometimes you do a great job, and sometimes you don't. Whenever I was interviewed for the job at Hearst, I showed up, and they had every issue of Atlanta Homes that I had edited for the past 4 years. Let me tell you, out of 48 issues, there are a handful I wish they had not seen. So, but it didn't matter. They saw the overall body of work. Was I interested in branding myself? No. I was interested in branding the magazine. And in reality, I have never edited a magazine where I'm the demographic. I'm certainly not the demographic for Veranda. I was not the demographic for Atlanta Homes. Like I said, if I went to Sports Illustrated, I'm not that demographic. So you always have to keep the reader in mind. And you're not creating the content for yourself, you're creating it for the reader. Yes?
How do you end up in a sense paying it forward? How can you in your shoes and you have various mentors and people?
Oh, I have to say, I've always had the very, very best mentors, and I'm painting this perfect picture, and it certainly wasn't always perfect. But even in high school, I felt like I had the best English teachers. When I went to the community college, besides Samir, the instructor I had there was exceptional, really exceptional, and really pushed me into taking on more and more roles. I had only taken one journalism course and was made editor-in-chief of the college newspaper. And whenever I had graduated high school, I was like, I am really done with journalism. Even the yearbook burned me out. And she came searching for me. She had heard and saw the yearbook that I had produced and literally came searching for me. And the rest is history, I guess. But in terms of what we can do, Hearst has an amazing internship program, and we actually had some OMIS students this summer. Unfortunately, we can't have recent graduates, so if you've just graduated, you can't be an intern. It has to be for college credit. But hopefully, you know, as Samir and Michael Clinton spoke earlier in the week, there could be more opportunities for that, because it really adds another layer and another level of excitement and energy to our own offices when we have great interns.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Glenn. Just so you won't think all my graduate students are from the 90s and that I'm that way back old, we have another student who just graduated a few years back who's going to share some comments. Alex McDaniel, who was my graduate teaching assistant, who was also the editor of the Daily Mississippian, the student newspaper, the editor of the yearbook, was on TV, radio. Is there anything you did not do when you were in school?
Sports.
Sports. She's a sports fanatic. Alex McDaniel.
I have a little URL
Okay.
for it, and I can type it in. Is the Wi-Fi slow?
Where is the? I don't see the Wi-Fi signal. Okay.
Can you just type it in, or is it
Too many of you are using the Wi-Fi?
that tiny?
Mine is always available.
Another browser maybe?
That's weird. That will never happen in a magazine.
I can set up a hotspot with my phone.
Okay. If you, I don't know what's happening to the Ole Miss. Boss X, Bobble Batcave. Password.
Frodo lives. Frodo lives. One word.
F-R-O-D-O-L-I-V-E-S. Lives or? No.
And try it again.
It failed. Let's try it again.
It's still connecting.
Yeah. Okay. All the way from the Bat Cave. Okay, so you have the.
I can type it
Yeah.
if you want.
Let me just close this other thing.
Should be good, I think. Do I just plug this back into?
Yeah, I'll connect it.
Thank you.
See, anybody who's willing to share his password with somebody else, that's the sign of a true friend. Maybe before the conference is over, I will release both from Jay.
Let's see. I wonder if we can format it to the screen. Maybe. Okay, so when Doc asked me to speak today, I was really excited about it, but I really hate talking about stuff I've done because it's awkward. And I was like, well, how do I? It's basically like a resume, right? So I'm kind of talking about it and what the school did for me. So we have a little animation for today's presentation, so hopefully it won't be so bad. I'm Alex McDaniel. I graduated from Ole Miss from the undergraduate program in 2010. And right now I am at Alabama Media Group in Birmingham, where I am doing a lot of things, as I will share with you today. So this is just kind of an overview of how the school prepared me for the industry and all of the different things that I've done since then. Doc used to love teasing me in college about, like, will you just pick something and stick with it? Like, you're with a newspaper, you're with TV, like, you've always going to be moving around. And it's true. I mean, it's not so much that I get bored or anything like that. I just think right now in the industry, it's so interesting, depending on where you work, how you can get involved with different things. But I've always said you've got to have the one thing that is your strength, the one thing that is your foundation. For me, that's always been writing. So anything else has just kind of been my experience through the years. And so allegedly grown up is fair for me. I turned 28 this week, and I don't mind age. I don't mind getting older. It's just I just don't feel it, you know? I still feel like I'm... I feel like I'm still, you know, having to call my mom to say, well, how do I do this? And, you know, Dad, my tire's flat, you know, things like that. So allegedly is a fair assessment. I want to start with part of what I do at Alabama Media Group, even though technically, and you'll see a little later, my job title is reporter, that's just a way to be vague so I could pursue a lot of different things. And something I've been doing this year is going to Alabama and Auburn football games and interviewing fans. And so I just want to share this to share some entertainment, at least if nothing else, and give you a sense of what it's like living in Alabama. We don't need any interview questions because every answer is Roll Tide at Alabama. It's a beautiful day in downtown Atlanta, and in just a few hours, the Alabama Crimson Tide will kick off their season right behind me in the Georgia Dome. We have a lot of people here. The sun is shining. It's football season. Let's go see what people are talking about. Who's going to win today?
Alabama,
Why?
because we're better. We're from the SEC, and we got more national championships than anybody.
No, what conference is West Virginia in?
I have no idea.
Alabama.
think the Mountaineers are going to win, and that's because I am Earman, the beer man.
What are these ears? Now,
These are called Mighty Mountaineers because we are the West Virginia University Mountaineers, and these are my Mighty Mountaineers. Let's go, Mountaineers!
We are with the USS West Virginia, although we have several Alabama faithful that are going to remain incognito because we're basically here to support University of West Virginia because that's our ship name. So I have a prediction too.
Okay, what's your prediction?
I think that West Virginia is going to have 736 offensive yards. It's going to be crazy.
It will be great, and I believe you because you're wearing a uniform and you're very important.
Right.
Do you have any like silly Alabama superstitions or things like? Do you have to wear a certain ponytail holder?
Yeah, and a certain, I'm not gonna say that, pair of underwear.
People say, no matter what, to fear the gang's all here. So hail West Virginia, hail! Let's go Mountaineers! Let's go Mountaineers!
Friends.
You say RTR, roll tide roll, you know,
That cup was nothing but pure bourbon. Spirited.
Ramma Jamma, Yellow Hammer, give 'em hell, Alabama. Roll.
Last question, very important. How do you keep your uniform so white?
So we avoid Slurpees and chili dogs.
Yes.
A Bama fan has shown up to break up the West Virginia party.
Sweet home, Alabama.
Oh, we love that song. Everybody loves
the sky's also blue.
You're really good.
But we have our own song. Sweet home, Alabama. Lord, I'm coming home to you.
Lord, I'm coming.
Well, country road.
Oh my God.
Take me home.
Do your thing.
All right. Lost my teeth too.
He lost his teeth. So, I highly recommend if you can go to Alabama. You should do it. And I won't make any comment about the game last weekend, even though I could if I wanted to. No, don't do that. Let's get back to this. There we go. In college, I was a print major, obviously, specifically in the magazine program. I was just always interested in video, and I think something I see a lot with young people who graduate is they feel like whatever they did in college, that they're kind of stuck to it. And regardless of what their interests are in, I just started doing video when I was a teenager because it was cool to make movies. That was it. My dad bought me a video camera. I used really bad editing software, and I would make these dumb movies with my sister. And I just loved it. It was never anything that I thought, that's going to be a career for me. But I think it's important for students and for just how the industry is changing. If there is something you're passionate about, passion is so important with everything you're doing in your career and your life. And so that's just kind of an example of that is not my background at all, but it's something that I definitely have a lot of fun doing. So just really quickly, things I learned in college, and a lot of this is, it's not so much, hey, look at the curriculum. These are things that I find were different from other people who went to college, and a lot of it has to do with Dr. Husney in the magazine program. How to destroy things on purpose. So Dr. Husney mentioned that I was editor of the newspaper and editor of the yearbook. Well, it was a team effort, and both years we basically tore both of them down and decided, let's look at how we're doing our content, let's look at our design. Let's make this a more purposeful publication. You're publishing to students, and even though they can pick up the copy every day, it's 15,000 copies, they can do crosswords, they can do whatever, why don't we try to give them something they need and create a student journalism lab in the process? What we didn't want, and I think this is just a very common thing, we didn't want to change things around just to say, hey, look, we're different. Hey, look, we have this really modern design. Do you like it? Everything that we tried to do at the Student Media Center was definitely, it had to have a purpose, and I think that's something that Dr. Husney kind of drilled into her head. Very specifically, how to write a business plan that doesn't suck. And you have to write a lot that do suck before you get there. I think one of the best things that I got out of the magazine program is Dr. Husney wanted to make sure that we saw every side of what we were doing. It didn't matter if you wanted to be a writer for the rest of your life or an editor. It didn't matter what part of the business you wanted to be in, but he wanted to make sure the magazine students saw every part of it. So when you get to that capstone class at the end of your college career, you finally get to make a magazine. You've been going to school for 4 years, you're ready to get out, you've got all these ideas that are just great, right? Before you get to do that, you have to build the business plan. And the fact that there were no exceptions about it, that you had to learn that side of it, I mean, I think it's really valuable today. You can't be naive about it. Anywhere you work, you have to think about the business side, and you have to think about how it's working specifically in your brand and in today's industry. So that was really unique for us. And how to adapt when everything goes to hell. So, or just in general, I think the adaptability factor is huge. And it's like I said, you know, people, I see a lot of students especially, they kind of write themselves into these boxes and they think, well, my degree's in this, so I can't go into this. And I don't agree with that. I think if you are willing to be flexible, if you're willing to learn new skills, if you're willing to say, I can't do that as well as I can do that, and if you're willing to fail and fail quickly, it can go a long way when you get out of college, because it just makes you better at what you do, and it keeps you from having these, you know, quarter life crises. And so just kind of an overview, and the whole point of this, of kind of talking about what I've done so far, is that your job title has nothing to do with what you actually end up doing, which is a great thing. And it's kind of weird how my career has gone so far, and it's kind of like one step has led to the next. So I started out of college, I moved to New York and took a job at Parade Magazine. And it was editorial assistant, that was it. It was kind of, you're gonna help with, you know, some writing, some editing. But it took maybe a week to start doing a lot of other things. I think the first day there, they wanted me to edit video. I eventually started working on the digital side, learning SEO, and one day, I still don't know where I got the courage to do it, because I would have it now, maybe not then. I went to the editor with a memo, and I said, you know, your social media presence, it can be so much more than what it is. I mean, your Parade, you have years of nostalgia. You have this built-in audience. They're there. They're on Facebook. There's the room. There's the party. We just need to walk into it. And it was more of a suggestion of maybe, you know, I could help with social media, or just maybe we could talk about it. Well, she ended up putting me in charge of social media at Parade. Which was great, but it was also like, okay, I'm just gonna panic 24 hours a day. And so I did that for 3 months though, but it was still at this time when I think a lot of brands were like, hey, you're in your 20s, you have Facebook, run our social media. You can be the voice of our brand, not really realizing what kind of responsibility that was. So I never thought I would work in social media. It was something that I just had a Facebook, I had Twitter, I knew how to use it as a journalist, but that kind of started everything for me. After about a year, going back to the passion thing, I love New York. I'd visit there a million times, but my heart is in the South. I'm very passionate about Southern culture. I'm passionate about Southern food, and I knew I had to get back. The problem was there weren't really any jobs at magazines in the South at the time. And so I ended up taking a job at the state newspaper in Mississippi, down in Jackson at the Clarion Ledger, as their first social media editor. And this was the first time I really started creating a digital strategy for a brand, creating a content flow for this idea of, if we're starting on the web and we're going to print, but we also have this brand outside of it. And as you can see, a lot of other things happen there too. And so even though your title says something, I did a lot of writing, I did some video and everything else. So after 2 years, it was just time for a change. And on paper, it might look like it was a step backward, because my job at Alabama Media Group is just reporter. That's all it says. But I'm on the audience innovation team, so I work with a small group of people. We analyze site traffic. We look at how people are consuming our content, who they are, how long they're staying on it. Are they going on mobile? Are they going at a certain time of day? I work with SEO strategy, social media editing. I'm now covering SEC sports just because it's fun, and they're like, why not do it? And for some reason, they're like, hey, we have this series called Real Alabama Weddings. So once a month, I go to a wedding, and I cover that. And so, but it's great because it's challenging, and any job that you can stay outside of your comfort zone, I think you're naturally going to grow. If you start a new job and you feel immediately comfortable in what you're doing, then you kind of have to question, well, did I really make the right move? And so, but without that foundation, though, without the foundation of understanding different parts of the industry without, and just in magazine journalism in general, there's so much of a focus on storytelling, but also this focus on an appreciation for all the parts that come together to make it. I mean, Dr. Hosny took us to paper companies in Memphis, so we would know, you know, what we were working with, like paper products. We, you know, we've gone to a printing press, and he took us to New York to meet with, you know, plenty of magazines. And, you know, for a lot of people down here, when you grow up in the South, you have dreams of doing something, but if you don't get to see those dreams face to face, they might fade away. And I think the thing I appreciate more than anything about Doc is he does love students, and he wanted them to see, you can do this. There's no reason why you can't do this. And so I'm just very appreciative. I hate that we're all talking about him like it's a funeral or something. Well, you know what I really loved about Dr. Hosny is, but I am grateful. And I think at this point in my career, it's one of those things that I'm not sure about, you know, what's in the future, but right now it's kind of growing and telling stories, and I think that's all what we got into this to do. And it doesn't matter if I work at a magazine or a news station or a website or anything. We came here to be storytellers, and if you can leave here and have someone say, hey, I want to pay you money to be a storyteller, well, then you're lucky. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Alex before she runs away? Alex.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think you have to be really honest with yourself. You can be good at a lot of things. You can be adequate at a lot of things, but there's something you do better than anything. And maybe there are two some things. I don't know. Maybe people are lucky like that. I knew that. I mean, I always wanted to be a writer. That's what I put my energy into. That's what I loved. I loved reading. I loved writing. I consider myself a better writer than a videographer or, you know, a social media editor. Not to say that I haven't done well in those areas, but I think you have to have the thing, right? You have to have the thing that sets you apart, because it's great if you're good at these other things, but if 10 people behind you can be just as good, then what are you really offering? I think you've got to find the thing that drives you too. I mean, you've got to find something that you're passionate about, and because even if you're not naturally good at something at first, maybe you don't take to something, you can improve upon it, right? And if you care enough to do so, you can do that. But I think it's being honest with yourself. You can be good at a lot of things. A lot of people are good at a lot of things. I can walk and eat at the same time sometimes, you know? But it doesn't mean I should. So I think, yeah, be honest with yourself.
Any other questions?
What's your next dream job?
I don't know. I feel like I have my dream job. You know? I get to write. I love sports, so now I get to talk to fans and find out what drives them, and I love it.
Thank you. You know, I start thinking now after what Alex said about, like, it feels like it's my funeral and everybody's saying, like, we had an event a few years back with the Mississippi Press Association inducting someone in the Hall of Fame of the State Press Association. And they had an entire video about his life from the day he was like a little child, I mean, until like, and after the video was presented, they called on the guy to come forward and accept the award, and he would not move and come forward, accept and then his daughter was like trying to reach to him, and he was dead. I mean, so let's, I hope when I call on my next speaker, so we have one more testimonial from a former speaker, colleague, and assistant, Garreth Blackwell, whom he and I co-authored the book on everything you ever wanted to know about designing your own magazine. Garreth was my graduate teaching assistant. He was an honors student in the honors college as an undergraduate. Then he taught with us here at the Meek School of Journalism. He was the first person I ever trusted in letting go of my editing by design class and asking Garreth to teach that class. He's now working on his PhD at somewhere in the Yankee land, or is it not considered Yankee land? Okay, that border state over there in the jungles of Virginia or somewhere. Garreth Blackwell.
Yeah, so I'm not dead, so that's great. I was really hoping Doc wouldn't bring the room down before I had to start. So it's good that ended on a good note. Likewise with a lot of folks that have spoken so far, I have some interesting stories about how I
this or this?
do the bottom one. Interesting story about how I actually got involved. I am eternally grateful to Samir because he saved me. I came to Ole Miss to do law school, and it was, this kind of pie-in-the-sky type of dream of mine where I wanted to go out and I wanted to save the environment by taking down giant companies. I wanted to do that through going to law school. And so what I did is I started to gain experience in things that lawyers would need experience. So I worked at a courthouse for 2 summers and hated every moment of my life. I couldn't get out fast enough. And so finally, the second summer I was at this courthouse, I decided what I was going to do is I had had enough from one of the women that I worked with who constantly took everything from her inbox and put it in mine when I went to the restroom. So I decided when I left, I said, I've got to head out, and by the way, I'm not coming back, so you can have all your stuff back. Hope you enjoy it. And from there on out, I really had no clue what I was going to do. But I was far enough along in journalism that I really didn't want to invest another year in college. So I said, let's push through. Communications is something that everybody needs. Journalism is helpful with interviewing and reporting, with researching, with understanding things. So I said, let's go for it. Luckily, that next semester I had editing by design with Dr. Husney, and I said, wow, there's actually something I can do that doesn't grieve me as much as writing does. I can write, I don't have a problem with it, but I would much rather be putting form to content than actually making content. So I started doing this, started working with Dr. Husney, kept going through the magazine program, things were working well. I approached him, I don't know, it was probably a month before graduation in good college fashion. And I said, I'm starting to think about my future. And I said, I got this idea, maybe I'll go to grad school. It was the shortest meeting I've ever had with Dr. Husney because he said, exactly like Clinton has said, exactly like Neil said, and folks have said all throughout this, he told me exactly what was going to go on. He said, you're going to come here, you're going to be my graduate assistant, you're going to do this, this, and this, and we start in the fall. And so I was a little dazed, and I walked out of his office, and I called my parents, and I was like, I think I'm going to graduate school in the fall. So like, well, great, I didn't even know you're planning it. And I was like, well, like 45 minutes ago, I don't know that I was. So stuck around with Samir, kept doing more work, worked out well, and the same thing happened with the position to teach here at Ole Miss. There was some faculty shuffling that was going on, and so I walked in and I said, I think it'd be neat to teach some of these courses. I don't know if you have anybody for the fall. I know it's kind of a last-minute change. And he was like, you're going to come in, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's going to be great. So again, 2 years later, called my parents and I said, I think I just got a faculty position. And they're like, great, we didn't even know you were thinking about that. And I said, well, about 45 minutes ago, I don't know that I was. So it's been like that, and it's all because of this program. It's been something great that has given just like blessing upon blessing in terms of the things I can do with my career. And it's all happened because I've been pursuing things that I enjoy and that I'm passionate about. And I have met no one else in my educational career that has been as passionate about what they do as Samir. And so I have 3 things that I've picked up from the decade or so that I was around Samir, very closely here. And so this is a general overview wherein I recollect my profession through my educational training, my key points of concern, lessons learned, work completed, and a slew of helpful Samirisms. I can identify as a lot of things, but I will take the moniker of designer any day. And that's because that term is so broad and so wonderful that I can say a lot of things about it. As a designer, I don't have to sit here and say what I do is work in print. I don't have to say what I do is work in digital. I don't have to say what I do is even work in something that's a tangible product. I can work in things that Dr. Husney really pushes us to work into, which is experiences. So I'm a designer. I got here in 2001, and I couldn't find my way off of Highway 6 until about 2011 when I finally found my way to Virginia. I'm a doctoral student now. I'm studying the effects of graphic design on culture and society, how that works, how that functions. I'm enjoying it. And I'm enjoying it because my time with Dr. Husney told me that what I needed to do is I needed to look at numbers to figure out things. I didn't need to look at what pundits were saying. That I needed to look into things and research things, to explore things, to have passion about things. And doctoral work has been something that allows me to do that. It's been very engaging. It's been very enlightening. It's worked out really well. I was here on faculty, and that was amazing because I got to see the inside of an industry, education, that I really actually wanted to be a part of. A lot of times you find folks that have PhDs, and what they do is they kind of come about them because they kind of hated their first career. So they go to school to do something, and they decide, well, I'll just go back to school and teach because I really hated the job I had. You find that, but you also find people like Dr. Husney who knew that what they wanted to do was impart knowledge to people, to help students come along, to have great careers, to empower themselves and to move forward, and that's the same thing I got from him. So as I came through here, I decided, well, I actually do want to do this as a career. So the first thing that he taught me, surprise, surprise, love paper, and I do. I taught a class in magazine design that was more of an advanced course, and we actually would touch paper with blindfolds on. We get some nice groans from the audience because it actually is a thing that it's so tangible and tactile, and we could tell so much stuff by what we touched. So with a blindfold on and you feel newsprint, you can tell me how much you pay for this. With a blindfold on and you feel good cover stock that has texture to it and thermographic printing, you can tell me how much you pay for it. You don't have to do anything except touch it. It's a tactile experience. So he taught me to love paper. But also, this is what I learned in some ways from people, that this is our trajectory. We are a straight line. And luckily, for all of us here, you can relax because our industry is dead. It's pointless. It has no future. Because it apparently died in 1880. Radio came along, and suddenly those thousands of years of culture that have been brought up by print and paper didn't have to exist. But then radio died pretty soon, and then television died, and now we're in this digital thing, and it's going to die. Because this is what I was told. It was usually implicit. You didn't have any professors telling you that there's a single way that this works. But what you discover is that it is a straight line. Print definitely has a straight line, but it also has these things coming off of it. So way back in the day, we stopped using papyrus. We're no longer carving things on ivory tablets. We're not doing this, that, and the other. Instead, these things are breaking off into subsections of what we do. But still, that line is there, and always, as that blanket at night that keeps us company, we can still sit here and say, print is dead, thank God. But it's not. It's still here. It's that tactile experience. It's the thing that is going to become not dead, but more niche-focused, more streamlined, something that's going to actually affect people in smaller and smaller parts of the market. And that's not a bad thing, because what we've seen, what people have talked about all week, is that these smaller and smaller parts of the market that are becoming more and more interesting are the places where people are willing to put their money there. They'll pay $14.99. They'll pay $19.99. And you can supplement that with digital stuff all you want, but it becomes one part of this picture. Second thing, build business. We had people talking about entrepreneurship all week, and this program, the magazine program itself, is built on a foundation of building business. It is about going out and forming things. And I told a group of students this morning I spoke to, this is the most wonderful time to be a student in journalism, in communications, or anything. Because we've all heard a myriad ways that this industry is progressing. But we've also heard caveats that go along with it that says, this is what works for us. This is what we're finding to be successful. And that's because these days of a giant iron steamroller going through and doing things in one way doesn't seem to be here anymore. There are new ways to do things. And so what we do is fill in the gaps. For whatever reason, I think I'm a glutton for punishment. I am a doctoral student right now. I have a 7-month-old child. I am starting 2 businesses. And I try to have a social life. So what we did is a friend of mine and I, we started a design shop. Started a design work, and it was print, it was digital, it was whatever was necessary. And then we found out, well, there's so many inefficiencies in this, because we're sending this client work that we finished, and then they go send it off to some trash, cheap printer. And it's none of the people that have been to this conference. These are these local shops that just don't really care about output, they're just doing. And we said, well, there's all this inefficiency. We can save money, we can control the entire process. So what we did is we bolstered it up with print services. So we do some commercial printing as well. On our digital work, we had the same problem. Because people were coming to us and they'd say, we need a website. And we'd say, okay, well, we need to all have all your passwords and everything so you can get to your server. We can do what we need to. And we found out we were working with these garbage companies again. Their back ends were terrible, but things weren't working well. We had a hard time loading websites. Some things that we built wouldn't even work with some servers. So what we said was, well, we're going to have digital services. So now we operate a business that has a complete print and digital design side, has a commercial printing side, and to back up each of those, what we're able to do is take a project, digital or print, from idea to completion, all within house. We don't have to go anywhere else. That is not something that when you come out of school, you really want to start to tackle. It's not the idea you have like, oh, I'm going to be a full service shop, and by the way, we have 3 employees. It's not a great idea when you start to think about it, but as you work into it, these are the ideas that allow you to be entrepreneurial, that allow you to go out and control things and actually have conversations with people that create better products. So we have all of these things that we're doing, and we've done work that is all over the place. Some of the stuff we've done has been very, very strange, short run, but we love it. So we have this interaction. But what we do is through Wide Open Air, our design firm, we're able to do all your design work. We've got Carrington House Press, which does fine art printing. So if part of what you need involves letterpressing, we can do that in-house. We also have digital solutions to go with Wide Open Air where we do your hosting, your domain work. We have Square One Printing where we can do your commercial print work. We can do everything you need because we're not focused on the medium that you need to work in. Instead, we're focused on the thing you need to have happen. Whether that's customer engagement, whether that's marketing, whether that's just promoting yourself because you're an independent musician. Whatever it is, we try to help. So we have this whole smattering of work that we do, from websites locally to invitations for things, to digital magazines, to branding work, to top left corner, an actual cassette tape cover design. And then a promo booklet for a sitcom that was being launched in the Middle East. And you get this because what we do is we don't just sit here and say, you need to make this. Instead, we say, you need to have something that's very, very important. And that's an experience. Dr. Epstein always said, kind of in the vein of Willy Wonka, we are the experience makers. And it always stuck with me. Because it wasn't that we were just making stuff. Stuff goes away. Stuff doesn't connect with people. The experiences are the things that connect with people. So these experiences that we make, for example, we have a brand that we worked with, a guy who did, some of this text is messing up, and as a designer, that hurts me. So what he wanted to do is he had this long time following on Twitter. He had a blog that he did that turned into a website, and he wanted to branch out and do something. And he was very, very specific that he wanted it to be digital. So we talked about possible revenue with print versus digital. We talked about different ways that it could be done. We talked about different methods of delivery. He was a very adamant client, is the nicest way I can put it. Sometimes he listened. Sometimes I don't even know if he was on the other end of the phone. So what we did is we said, well, we can package all of this into something a little bit more full. Because if all we want to do is what you came to us with and give you a flat PDF, we send an email, no one will look at what you're doing. You've got limitations there, but also that email's getting deleted, and nobody's going to pay you $12.95 for an email attachment. This took a little convincing. Everyone here should know it shouldn't take that kind of convincing, but it took convincing for them. So what we said is, okay, instead of you putting together some 600-page PDF email attachment, how about we actually make some digital interactive magazines? Now we know the market isn't really out there, so I'm telling them, you're a niche publication. And not a niche publication in the sense that print niche publications are, but a niche publication in a market share that's 4%. You're like super niche. Because he's expecting, oh, I'm going to roll in the money. We're just going to get like 200,000 subscriptions, everything will be great. And all I did is just constantly tell him, you should check your sources. So we gave him data. So what we said is, you've got this content that works into 6 areas. 5 power conferences, and numbers for betting on those conferences. Let's make 6 publications, all right? Because honestly, I'm an SEC football fan. I couldn't care less if the ACC dissolved. Doesn't bother me at all. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to waste my time flipping through all this garbage about Florida State. I want to see Ole Miss.
I'm from Florida State.
Well, I stand by my point. I want to see Ole Miss. I want to see somebody talk bad about Mississippi State. I want to see the ridiculous fans that are cheering for Alabama. I want to see that stuff because that impacts me. So if I don't want the ACC stuff, if I don't want the Big 12, I don't need it. I can get the individual magazine. We said that's not enough. You've got to start selling things. And we're going to sell things because you're going to make paper and put it out there. So we developed a media kit. And this media kit went along with individual salesmen to places to have pressing the flesh meetings. This wasn't a cold call. It wasn't an email. It was going to talk to them specifically. Because this experience on the iPad was only going to do so much. And it was going to do almost nothing for advertisers. We talked about click-through rates. We talked about how many cents he was going to get for how many thousands of clicks and how the money wasn't going to be there as much as he wanted, but he did need it for some sort of credibility. So we did that. We developed all of this. We rebranded him because his branding beforehand was really, really bad. And so what we did is we redid the website and we said, you got to do these radio spots. So he started talking to folks from ESPN radio all over the country, building this up, talking about it. All of this contributing to an experience that we were making. So it wasn't we were coming in and making this digital magazine. We were making an experience and the digital magazine was part of it. Likewise, a current person we're working right now is the Massey Cancer Center in Richmond. And again, this typeface is not being good. So what we have is 3 segments now that we're dealing with in terms of the experience we make. So we have an overall experience. Massey Cancer Center takes a mile of one of the nation's largest 10K runs. They take a mile of it, and they call it the Massey Mile. And what they do is they use that as a branding element. So what they want you to do is have an experience. So as we've been working with these folks who are putting this together, we said you've got 3 segments that you need to create experiences for in this larger experience. It's the runners themselves, it's the local businesses you'll be partnering with, and it's the spectators. Because those 3 segments are all there having the same experience. So what do? Well, for the runners, we're talking about getting yellow bibs. Because in Richmond, you know that yellow stands for the Massey Cancer Center. That color is well branded. So we'll make their bibs yellow. We're going to get yellow jingle bells, stick them on their feet. So through the entire 10K, you hear these people, just this ching, 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 all the way through for 10 kilometers. We're going to work on a site that people can go to, and we can activate an audience that's going to give money and provide a place for donations, a portal for that. And we're going to use that color everywhere. We're talking about pigment dust on the pavement at different intervals, so as people run through them, it's actually turning 10 kilometers of Richmond streets yellow. Now that's just the runners. That's their experience, what they're seeing, the things that are going to keep them occupied in this experience. For the local businesses, that's where you really start to enjoy it because that's where we get to do a lot of design. So we're going to have vinyl window clings that create this community where people know that I stand with the Massey Cancer Center, I support the Massey Cancer Center. We're going to be doing icons that allow people to say, this is what I'm taking part in. These things are also going to be showed on t-shirts in the audience. They're going to be in giving posts that are mile markers, possibly. There's going to be notes that people can put onto these inspiration walls where they show that they are running for someone. And then signs. These are going to be banners. They're going to be things that are put down as kind of vinyl or rubberized banners on the ground itself. It's all about creating that experience. Because at the end of the day, the experience is going to be much more beneficial to someone than giving them a printed piece of paper or an email or something that just says, here's what we want to do. We create the experience people can be a part of. And now the last thing, the most wonderful thing that Dr. Husney ever taught me is to shamelessly self-promote. And if you've ever met Samir, you know that this is absolutely true. So this is my point, to sit here and say, hi, my name is Garreth Blackwell. I'm the owner of Wide Open Air Consulting and Design. I also help run a commercial crane business. We are here to help you. Thank you very much.